about measurement. I'm amazed that there's been predictive modelling, machine learning done in banks, telcos, insurance companies, government for decades now, literally decades. And to date, there is still very haphazard measurement of accuracy at all. Measurement of accuracy is not valued. Why are we doing machine learning at all if we don't care about accuracy? More to the point, hardly anyone I talk to in these functions knows or cares about the predictive accuracy of their competitors. They're not troubled by whether their competitors have predictive accuracy. And I would think if you're in a telco, and as a competing telco, and you've got a saturated market, and you're building retention and acquisition models, every win for you is a loss for your competitors and vice versa. But I'm not seeing businesses care about it too much, and I'll leave it as an open question as to why. So, I'm almost at the end, mate. Let's talk about finding, managing, and training data scientists. And I say it's not easy. I think a good data scientist is a very interesting kind of person. They're part engineer, sure. They're part entrepreneur, yeah. They're also part hunter-gatherer. There's this sort of restless, ADHD, unfocused person who's also can be hyper-focused. They're outcome-focused explorers. Having ADHD makes you a terrible engineer, but it makes you, I think, a much more effective data scientist. Up to a point. And your communication skills, your lateral thinking skills, and your conceptual skills, your ability to grab all of these concepts are incredibly important. But I've said nothing about the technical skills. Those have to be deep as well. So yes, machine learning, stats, and way more than just an undergrad degree in both. And you do need a lot of stats, you do need a lot of maths. It's not enough to just know how to code. I'm finding that recruiters are severely out of their depth, and so are HR functions. I also find that the best data scientists out there are unemployed, underemployed, and misemployed, because they completely hit the sort of the barriers of HR and recruitment. So the sort of people that conform best to corporate culture tend not to be the best data scientists, and conversely. It generally takes one to know one, which is why a lot of recruiters call me and say, hey, can you recommend someone? So I'm finding that the sort of the data scientist brotherhood that's emerging, at least in Australia, is turning out to be a pretty important recruitment vehicle, and recruiters are recognising it. I'm actually working with about 3 or 4 different recruitment companies on this basis. So let's talk about the skills. It's an eclectic skill set. I've put hard skills into a little basket, and I've had people take issue with the fact that I've put psychology into the hard skill set. But psychology, the science, and the outcomes of psychology, I think, are relevant in the hard skill set as far as target marketing and so forth goes. The softer skills aspects of psychology certainly go on the other side. But yes, all that stats, all that machine learning, all that computing, all that domain expertise, which goes way beyond the undergraduate level or possibly even the master's level. We're talking some very serious skills here, and that's just part of it. Then there are the soft skills, the conceptual skills, the communication skills, actually the practice of science, the philosophy of science, stuff I've been throwing at you. And then there are the management methodologies that make it all this happen. I think we're going to be emerging new ones, but they're going to come from Agile, the roots of Agile, the Agile Manifesto. Lean Startup, I think, is a great step in that direction. Analyst First is my attempt in that area, and I really should put that on the list. There's something called Cynefin, which is the most amazing conceptual map of human activity I've ever seen. And if anyone's interested in asking me about Cynefin, I'll tell you about it in question time. And Moodle. In terms of training data scientists, yes, courses, yes, Coursera, great. But I think experience is crucial. And experience is about making mistakes and trial and failure. I should have said more about trial and failure. Lean Startup talks about this a lot. Have you heard the motto, fail early, fail often? Great motto. Mistakes are valuable, and I don't think courses are enough. You need an apprenticeship. Just like it takes one to know one, it takes one to train one. You need to be a good data scientist, you need to train with a or several good data scientists. Courses help, but they're not a substitute. And they certainly won't teach the soft skills and the conceptual outlook I've just described. And the best data scientists I've seen experience a pretty hard time in the corporate world, which can be quite unforgiving, particularly for young data scientists, you know, who are taught to be honest, taught to be truth-seeking and so forth, and don't have the political skills. In terms of managing data scientists, I did say that there are good things and bad things. And in terms of managers, you want someone who's engaged, empowered, and interested, which is not most of the people that I've actually seen managing data scientists. So who needs data scientists? Well, the only people who need data scientists. Luckily, yes, it's hard to find them, and yes, they're hard to manage, but luckily most businesses don't need them, because the only businesses that need data scientists are the businesses facing real competition, real threats, real uncertainty, and real change. Who doesn't need data scientists? Everybody else.
summarize the two problems, we have tools and food.
The head of Analyst First in Melbourne, Alderman James, has a saying, which he repeats often: a fool with a tool is still a fool.
I have a question about selling data science, like in general.
Yes.
So I'm thinking two ways, like selling business to business. Let's say you have consultancy, and I think that's what you're doing. So how do you convince an enterprise to buy data science? Because you cannot package this as a project with requirements and timeline and stuff. And on personal level, let's say I am or want to be a data scientist, how do you prove you are a good data scientist? If you cannot present a certificate, you know.
That's a really good question. Okay. So the first part of your question, I have another set of slides that I presented to the R user group where I explain why I've pretty much banned Australian federal government as a consulting client. Why I very seldom and never aggressively consult to Australian blue chips. Why I've moved much more into training, startups, the Asia Pacific region. I want to deal with businesses who compete. In terms of selling data science to big corporations, I give up. They want to buy it, or they want to buy the word. I'm not sure they want to buy the thing. And who is they? There is no they. There is no business called there is no person called Singtel. There is no person called Standard Chartered. There are just a bunch of employees, each with their own agendas. You have to understand what the individuals want, and there's no simple answer to your question. The bottom line is, for me, I'm very tired of selling data science. I'd rather be using it for advantage. I'd rather sell, I don't know, pens or cups or something, and use data science as my secret weapon to sell them, than try to sell data science to someone. And selling training, I'm doing fairly rudimentary data science, but when I look at my LinkedIn ads reports, for example, I feel so much happier. The parable I tell is, there was a horrible Tom Cruise film, I think it was called Far and Away, where Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman are an Irish couple, and he's from a poor Irish Catholic family, and they escape to America. And just before he escapes to America, there's a scene where he's sitting outside of his very poor house with his father, and his father says to him, "And you know, son, when you work your own land, it's as if the good Lord is smiling on you from heaven." And this is my experience. When you work your own data, when you're actually not in the business of trying to convince someone to buy your services, to work their data, to then make decisions based on that data, things out of your control. When it's your data, when it's your business, when it's your decisions, it's a completely different experience. So, sadly, you've identified a problem, and unfortunately, I don't have a good solution for you, other than look for real businesses. Look for businesses that act, and where the management are actually owners. Where the management have the same incentives as the abstract business. So there may not be such a person as whatever big public listed company there is, but for a relatively small startup, there is. And this is why I also take upside. I'm very happy to say, look, if this does well, I'll take a huge chunk, but if this does not do well, you don't have to pay my ridiculous consulting rate. And that's the other thing I did, I put up my rates. So if people really, really know they want me, they'll pay the money because they understand the value. If they just want to spend a token amount on a vanity project, they can hire someone else. In terms of identifying good data scientists, how do you prove you're good? Things like Kaggle have certainly helped to create a certain standard for certain things. I don't think it's an entirely adequate standard, because a lot of the stuff that goes into data science is solving all of these kind of, if you will, BA problems. And the sort of problems you have in Kaggle are cut and dried, right? You have a well-prepared, predefined, and purely technical problem. However, I think it takes one to know one. I think data science needs an informal fellowship, kind of like the Royal Society of 300 years ago, or the professional associations at the early stages. I was one of the founders, I should say, I don't perform personally, but one of the founders of the Australian Institute, of the Institute of Analytics Professions of Australia. I now believe that was a huge mistake. I don't think analytics should be a formal profession the way the others are, because I think that actually prevents innovation and flexibility. I don't think data science can afford that sort of prevention. I do, however, think that a mutually accrediting fellowship of the best and brightest, along with a few objective things like Kaggle thrown into the mix, is the right sort of thing. And one of the things that Analyst First is emerging into, that wasn't the plan, it's not why Analyst First was formed, but Analyst First seems to be, by by emergence in Australia, becoming kind of a who's who of the best in the field. Still an open question. So I saw a hand up there as well.
Yeah, I think it's related to what this gentleman here brought up. When you talk about all this, I think I'm in agreement with you. I myself have had difficulty navigating to where these opportunities are. What I've observed in Asia, and I may be wrong, is that people are not even data-driven. They go by their gut.
Yes.
And that's the intelligence, okay? And the height of the systems being put in place, I think it's important that we learn the tools because as a SaaS programmer, you can manipulate and you test your ideas. So I think you need fundamental tools where you know how to load, process. Those are not difficult tools to explore your ideas. But if you're not in academia, and you get these funding and you have to be pretty politically savvy and really top-notch, I think as a practitioner, you need to collaborate with people. I think that you have to be very good at getting a bread and butter, so go be an ERP specialist. But on the sidebar, I think you're right. It's stealth mode. You go in and you have this passion about data, and it's innate. It's not something that you go learn. And you see patterns and it excites you. I think a good undergraduate degree in the liberal arts, and what used to be Harvard, is all being lost. And I think that ability to really get excited about learning and solving problems for the sake of solving problems, but also adding value, is something that I don't think we can learn from an MBA program, from a computer science program.
This is why you did an apprenticeship.
Right, but even in apprenticeship, people want to measure your KPIs, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what sort of apprenticeship you have in mind.
Right.
I don't mean, I actually have a number of informal apprenticeships.
Yeah.
I've pushed for a formal apprenticeship program in the IAPA, the Institute of Analytics Professionals Australia. It's one of those things that never happened, and one of the reasons why I just withdrew completely and became very critical of that organisation. I have an informal, which I want to formalise. My mission over this month has been to formalise Analyst First's apprenticeship program.
Okay.
But at the moment it's informal, and the whole purpose of the apprenticeship program is primarily the soft skills, the communication skills. It's to give young analysts a bit of a survivorship
Right.
guideline for dealing with the politics.
So if you were to describe this path that you're taking, what are the low-hanging fruits? Because all of us when we come out of school, right, we don't have the contacts. That's time and experience. It's not something you can learn from a textbook. Some people are very, very smart, so they drop out Harvard and they make it, right? But not all of us are that way. What are the low-hanging fruit as somebody wanting to go in there should kind of work at? It's not technology. It's good, open source and things like that. But there's something else. How would you identify what the low-hanging fruit is for somebody who wants to navigate stealth mode and learn, for somebody who wants to help educate the need for that gut with
Are you
technology?
talking about, okay, you're talking about two different things.
Yeah.
First of all, I thought you were talking about how do you help a young analyst enter the field.
Yes.
But I think you're also asking about how do you get actual engagement appropriately incentivized, appropriately understood. In Analyst First, we have this notion of the Holy Trinity, which is the three things you want a manager to have for you to want to work for them. And these are rare, all three in combination. They have to have the right understanding of what you're there for. They have to have the empowerment to look after you, give you all the things you need, and act on whatever decisions you make. They have to be at the appropriate level of seniority. They have to know what you're there for. And here's the most important one of all: they have to have the right incentives. They have to want you to succeed. Sometimes people have a very good understanding of analytics and what it can do.
Right, but those are ideal. But you are working against the grain, and I don't think we should give up, because it's not a new paradigm. It's an old paradigm that is revived.
Well, I haven't finished answering your question.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, you're asking what are the low-hanging fruit. Well, the first thing, before you even ask where the low-hanging fruit, I think it's more important to identify where the high-hanging fruit. Because I
Okay.
think most people are reaching for high-hanging fruit, and I'm saying avoid them. I think there's a thing called via negativa. Via negativa is a philosophical idea, and it's basically a way of saying sometimes we don't know what the right thing to do is. But it's easier to identify what are clearly the wrong things and to stop doing them. So for example, there is no intelligence function in businesses, but it's clear that analytics should not be in the IT function. So I would say there's a via negativa approach. I would say use a process of elimination to identify, to get rid of the ones that are clearly bad, and then use Machiavelli's principle of the lesser of two evils to identify the best ones. So I don't have a clear answer for you other than avoid the worst ones. Deprioritize the worst ones and work your way down. Nothing's ideal at the moment, and everything's still being evolved. But for a young analyst, it shouldn't be about where they should work. It should be about where they network. It should be about find yourself a mentor. Find yourself several mentors. It's about find yourself activities apart from your work, like a Kaggle competition, like Coursera courses, like some sort of informal, semi-formal apprenticeship/research activity. I think those things are much more important to a healthy analytics career than where are you going to find your first job.
Okay, agreed.
Any other questions?
I have one. You talked about the predictive accuracy and intelligence coming out of the data and so on. Can I kind of classify, I mean, when it comes to data analysis, I always look at it in two ways. One is the information, another one is the prediction.
Yes.
Information is basically the business intelligence, the insight that you derive out of it. Then can you probably, extend that trend and predict something else? So information versus prediction. So can I say, I come from a BA company.
From
so BA, business intelligence. It's called Excellent Technologies.
It's an integrator.
System integrator,
Okay.
but specializing in business intelligence.
Okay.
So can I say business intelligence, that vertical, is a data science category, and
Yes.
the prediction is more like engineers solving a problem of predicting what will happen in the future.
I think the distinction between business intelligence, data science, analytics, big data is extremely artificial. I think those are the wrong distinctions. Engineering science distinction is an important one. The prediction, non-prediction distinction is also very vague. Okay, what does prediction really mean versus non-prediction? We can talk about it. I think it's a secondary consideration, but I certainly think that everything I've just discussed is relevant for BI. I also think that what BI does in terms of very simple reporting is the stuff people should do first. You should be doing simple BI before you're doing advanced predictive modeling and so forth. You should be curious about the numbers before you're trying to do anything terribly fancy with them. So, but having said that, I'll also say that I don't see why people are spending so much money on BI systems. I actually don't believe there is a business case for spending a single cent on BI software these days, in 99% of cases. Yes?
Didn't you actually answer your own question, because that's a different slide where large companies are spending large amounts of money on that because they're all vanity projects. And I was going to ask you, do you think the larger the company, the more likely it is just a vanity project?
Yes, except possibly for the Silicon Valley exceptions. I have hope that the Googles and Apples of this world are healthier in their science than they are.
The only other exception might be,
And militaries.
well, yeah,
In war, not the US military
yeah.
these days, but a military at war tends to be, by necessity, a healthier culture.
Maybe a company that really is on its last legs might use that information versus one that's just propping up its own.
Having a real owner helps. Not being a company that's actually, being a company that's owned by everybody and therefore nobody, or a country that's owned by everybody and therefore nobody, can be problematic.
I'll give you a good example of that. I used to work for Motorola, and we were a successful company until the last Galvin stepped down. And as much as we disliked him then, as soon as the last family member steps down from Motorola, that company's out of existence within 6 years.
I'd like to talk to you about that some more, actually. It's very interesting.
I think we will cut it short here, sorry. Then because we still got one more speaker here, we have another panel discussion coming up after the two speakers. Then we can have more chance to interact with Eugene.